Story 1. The Road That Breathed. The asphalt beneath my tires started pulsing with rhythm that matched a heartbeat, and when I pulled over to check for mechanical issues, I saw the road surface expanding and contracting like lung tissue, inhaling and exhaling through pores in the pavement. And other drivers were stuck in the breathing sections, their vehicles rising and falling with each massive breath the highway took, and the CB radio transmitted sounds of respiration, deep gaseous exchanges that suggested the road itself was alive, was organism, was breathing entity that we were driving across. And with each mile the respiration grew stronger, more pronounced, until I could feel individual breaths pushing my truck upward during inhalation, pulling it downward during exhalation, and I realized we weren't driving on road anymore, but on the back of something vast and alive, something that had been pretending to be highway, something that was waking up. Marcus Vega, 46 years old, hauling agricultural equipment across the Great Plains, 19 years experience. June 7th, 2023, westbound on Highway 50 through Kansas. Afternoon driving through flat country. The road stretched endlessly ahead, straight and monotonous, heat shimmering off pavement in familiar patterns. Standard conditions I'd driven through thousands of times. Around 2:30 p.m. I felt a rhythmic vibration through the steering wheel, gentle pulsing at regular intervals. Initially, I assumed it was tire imbalance or suspension issue, something mechanical requiring attention at next stop. But the rhythm was too organic, too steady, approximately 60 beats per minute, like a heartbeat transmitted through my truck's frame. I checked my mirrors, looking for road damage or surface irregularities that might cause the pulsing. The pavement behind me looked normal, solid, unchanging. But ahead, maybe a quarter-mile distant, I could see something wrong with the road surface. It was moving, undulating slightly, rising and falling in waves that traveled toward me. I slowed to 45 miles per hour, approaching the anomaly carefully. As I got closer, the movement became undeniable. The asphalt was breathing, expanding upward during inhalation, contracting downward during exhalation, the entire road surface participating in respiratory cycle. The pulsing I'd felt through my steering wheel was this breathing, transmitted through my tires from living pavement. I stopped completely, maybe 50 yards from the breathing section, put the truck in park, got out to investigate on foot. The temperature was high, mid-90s, but the heat radiating from the road ahead was different, was body heat, had the quality of warmth from living tissue rather than sun-heated asphalt. I approached slowly, watching the surface rise and fall, watching it breathe with steady rhythm. Up close, I could see pores in the pavement, tiny openings that dilated during inhalation, expelled air during exhalation. The road was respiring, was exchanging gases with atmosphere, was alive in ways that violated everything I understood about construction materials and highway engineering. I knelt down, put my hand near the surface without touching. Heat pulsed from the pores, warm exhalations that carried odor. Not unpleasant, but organic, biological, the smell of something living. Other vehicles were approaching from both directions. A sedan reached the breathing section first, slowed but didn't stop, drove onto the living pavement cautiously. As the car crossed the breathing surface, it rose and fell with each respiratory cycle, passenger compartment visible lifting during inhalation, dropping during exhalation. The driver looked terrified, gripping the wheel tightly, but the car made it across, reached normal pavement on the far side, accelerated away quickly. I walked back to my truck, considered options. I could turn around, find alternate route, avoid the breathing section entirely. But Highway 50 was the most direct path, and turning back would add hours to my delivery schedule. Other vehicles were crossing successfully. The breathing road seemed to allow passage, seemed to accept vehicles traveling across its surface. I got back in my truck, started the engine, drove slowly toward the breathing section. My front tires touched the living pavement, and immediately I felt the difference. It was softer, more yielding, had texture unlike normal asphalt. The steering felt spongy, like driving on organic material, on flesh rather than road surface. The truck began rising and falling with the breath cycle. Inhalation lifted me maybe 3 feet, entire vehicle ascending as the road expanded. Exhalation dropped me back down, sometimes below the level of surrounding pavement as the road contracted. The motion was nauseating, disorienting, but not immediately dangerous. I maintained steady speed, crossing the breathing section, which extended for approximately 2 miles. Throughout those 2 miles, the breathing grew stronger, more pronounced. What had been subtle undulations at the beginning became massive respiratory movements, lifting my truck 6 feet during peak inhalation, dropping it into valleys during exhalation. I felt like I was riding the back of something enormous, something that was waking up, becoming more active, increasing its metabolic rate. The CB radio started transmitting sounds of breathing. Not voices, just respiration, loud gaseous exchanges that echoed through the speaker. Deep inhalations, long exhalations, the sound of lungs the size of highways processing air. And beneath that, I heard heartbeat, slow, powerful, maybe 40 beats per minute, suggesting something massive, something with cardiovascular system scaled to continental proportions. Other trucks were on the breathing section with me now. I could see them in my mirrors, rising and falling with the respiratory cycle, all of us surfing. The breath waves all trapped on this living surface that stretched for miles. A voice came through the CB, panicked. "What is this? What are we driving on?" "It's breathing," I answered. "The road is alive. It's breathing." "Roads don't breathe. Roads are concrete and asphalt. They're not biological." "This one is. Feel it? Feel the rhythm? That's respiration. That's something living beneath us, pretending to be highway." More drivers chimed in, all experiencing the same impossible phenomenon. The breathing road had trapped maybe a dozen vehicles, all of us riding the respiratory cycles, all feeling the massive heartbeat through our tires, all trying to cross before whatever we were driving on became fully conscious, fully active, fully aware it was being used as highway. The breathing accelerated. 60 breaths per minute, 70. The road was hyperventilating, was increasing oxygen intake, was preparing for something. And with each faster breath, the movements became more violent, lifting my truck 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet above baseline, then dropping into valleys that felt like the road was inverting, collapsing inward, trying to swallow vehicles. I accelerated, trying to cross the living section before conditions worsened. But acceleration made it worse. The faster I drove, the more sensitive the road became, the more it responded to my presence. It was reacting to traffic, was feeling the weight of vehicles, was starting to notice it was being driven on, was being used, was supporting weight it hadn't agreed to support. Then it coughed. The entire road surface convulsed, massive spasm that threw my truck sideways, nearly rolled it. I fought for control, corrected, kept the truck upright. Another cough, more violent, and I saw a sedan ahead of me flip completely, land on its roof, slide across the heaving pavement. The road was trying to expel us, to clear its surface, to remove the irritants that were driving across its back. "We need to get off," someone shouted through the CB. "It's rejecting us. It knows we're here." But there was nowhere to go except forward. The shoulder was breathing too, was part of the same organism. The only escape was to reach the far side, to cross completely before the road decided to reject vehicles more violently, before it stopped tolerating traffic entirely. I pushed the accelerator to the floor, racing across the living surface as it bucked and heaved beneath me. The breathing had become chaotic, irregular gasping rather than steady respiration. The heartbeat was racing now, tachycardia, maybe 120 beats per minute, the sound transmitted through my chassis like I was inside a chest cavity, inside the body of something panicking. Ahead, I could see the transition, where the breathing road ended and normal pavement began. 500 yards, 300, 100. My truck crested a massive inhalation, launched, partially airborne, landed hard on the far side on dead, non-breathing asphalt. The impact was brutal, suspension compressing fully, but I was across, was off the living section, was back on road that was actually road and not disguised organism. I pulled over immediately, hands shaking, heart racing in rhythm with the phantom heartbeat I could still feel echoing through my bones. In my mirrors, I watched the breathing section continuing to heave and spasm. The sedan that had flipped was being absorbed, sinking into the road surface like quicksand. The pavement opening to swallow it, closing over it, consuming it entirely. Within minutes, no trace remained. The road had eaten the vehicle, had digested it, had removed the evidence. Other trucks that had been crossing with me emerged one by one, all pulling over in shock, all gathering to process what we'd experienced. We stood on the shoulder, watching the breathing road from safe distance, watching it continue its respiratory cycle, watching it return to calmer rhythm now that the irritating vehicles had been cleared from its surface. "What do we do?" one driver asked. "Report this? Call authorities? Warn other vehicles?" "Who would believe us?" another responded. "Ooh, we'd sound insane. There's a living road on Highway 50 that breathes and eats cars. They'd revoke our CDLs, send us for psychological evaluation." But we had to warn people. Couldn't let other drivers innocently cross the breathing section without knowing what they were driving on. We put out CB warnings, contacted Highway Patrol, filed reports. Most responses were skeptical, dismissive. But some officers took us seriously, went to investigate, and they confirmed it. 2-mile section of Highway 50 was exhibiting anomalous movement, was rising and falling rhythmically, was demonstrating characteristics inconsistent with normal pavement. The highway was closed that evening. Engineers and scientists arrived to study the breathing road to determine what was causing the phenomenon. They took samples, ran tests, measured respiratory rate and depth. Their conclusions were preliminary and disturbing. The asphalt had been colonized by something biological. Some organism that had integrated with road materials, had grown through the entire 2-mile section, had created hybrid structure that was part highway, part living tissue. They didn't know what it was, didn't know if it was fungal network, bacterial colony, or something completely unknown. Didn't know if it was isolated to this section or if it was spreading, colonizing more highway, turning more roads into breathing organisms. Didn't know if removal was possible or if the only option was to avoid it, route traffic around it. Except that this section of Highway 50 was no longer fully under human control. I've driven past the area several times since. The breathing section is barricaded now, closed to traffic, surrounded by warning signs and research equipment. But I can see it from the detour route, can see the pavement rising and falling, can see it continuing its respiratory cycle, living its hybrid existence as thing that's both road and organism. And I've heard reports of other breathing roads, other highways exhibiting respiratory patterns, other pavement showing signs of biological colonization. It's spreading, whatever it is, integrating with infrastructure, turning our road network into living system, creating highways that breathe and pump and digest and grow. I'm cautious now when I drive. Watch for irregular movement in pavement ahead. Listen for rhythmic vibrations through the steering wheel. Pay attention to any signs that the road beneath me is more than just construction materials, is something alive, is something breathing. Because some roads are organisms now. Some highways have hearts and lungs and digestive systems. And driving across them means trusting they'll let you pass, hoping they'll tolerate your weight, praying they won't decide to reject you, to cough you off their surface, to swallow your vehicle like they swallowed that sedan, consuming you completely and leaving no trace except memories of drivers who crossed the breathing roads and survived to warn others. The road that breathed. I drove across it, felt its heartbeat, heard its respiration, watched it swallow a vehicle that couldn't cross fast enough. And I know it's still there, still breathing, still living its hybrid existence, still accepting some traffic and rejecting others according to whims and tolerances only it understands. Highway 50 through Kansas, mile marker 247 to 249, 2 miles of breathing road. It's closed now, but it won't stay closed forever. Eventually, traffic will resume, vehicles will cross, and most drivers won't know they're driving on the back of something alive, something that breathes, something that's been pretending to be highway but is really organism, waiting beneath wheels and tires, tolerating weight until the day it doesn't, until the day it wakes fully and decides to reject everything, to shake off the vehicles, to reclaim itself from the transportation system that built on its back without asking permission. I felt it breathing, rising and falling, inhaling and exhaling. Heart beating beneath my tires, and I know we're driving on something alive now, something that's colonizing our roads, something that's turning infrastructure into biology, something that breathes and might one day decide it's done being highway, done being driven on, done tolerating the weight of civilization crossing its surface every day without acknowledgement or consent. The road breathes, and we drive across it, ignorant or ignoring until the day it stops tolerating us, stops pretending to be pavement, stops accepting vehicles and becomes fully itself, living, breathing, conscious organism that highways were never supposed to be. I crossed it once, won't cross it again, because next time it might be hungrier, might be less tolerant, might decide that vehicles are food rather than burden, are nutrients rather than irritants. And I'll be just another driver absorbed into breathing pavement digested by road, becoming part of the organism that pretends to be highway while really being something alive, something breathing, something waiting beneath millions of tires for the moment it stops pretending and reveals what it actually is. The road that breathed, it's still breathing and spreading. Mile by mile, road by road, turning pavement into organism, infrastructure into biology. One day we'll realize the entire highway system is alive, is breathing, is one massive organism we've been driving across without knowing, without understanding that roads aren't always dead material, but sometimes living tissue that's learned to mimic concrete and asphalt while actually being something else entirely. Something that breathes. Something that has heartbeat, something that tolerates us for now but might not forever. The road breathes, and we drive across it, unaware we're crossing the back of something alive. Story 2. The truck stop that served yesterday. The diner at the truck stop was serving meals I'd eaten yesterday, presenting exact plates I'd ordered 24 hours ago at a different location. And when I asked the waitress about the coincidence, she said, "We only serve yesterday's food. We cook the past. We present meals from previous days because today's food hasn't been eaten yet, so we don't know what to cook." And the other diners were eating their own yesterdays, consuming meals from their previous stops, chewing food they'd already digested, and with each bite I felt the memory of yesterday's meal returning, tasted it twice, once now and once in recollection. And the waitress kept bringing more courses from further back, showing me plates from last week, last month, last year, serving my entire dietary history in reverse chronological order. And I was eating my way backward through time, consuming my past one meal at a time, approaching the first meal I'd ever eaten, the original food, and what happens when you consume your entire history. When you eat yourself back to birth. When yesterday's food leads to all the previous yesterdays until there's no more past to serve. Catherine Morris, 38 years old, hauling electronics across the Midwest, 10 years experience. August 22nd, 2023, driving through Iowa on Highway 20, approaching midnight. I needed food and rest. Saw signs for a truck stop called Yesterday's Stop. Unusual name, but not unprecedented. Many truck stops have quirky names, nostalgic themes. I pulled in around 11:45 p.m. The parking lot was half full, dozen trucks in various states of rest. The building looked dated, like it had been built in the 70s and never renovated, all wood, paneling, and faded signage. Inside, the diner was bright and clean despite the exterior age, staffed by a single waitress who looked exhausted but professional. "Sit anywhere, hun," she said. I took a booth near the window, picked up the laminated menu. It had no prices, no descriptions, just dates. August 21st, 2023, August 20th, 2023, August 19th, and so on, going back months and years. I assumed these were daily specials or themed offerings. The waitress appeared with coffee. "What'll you have?" "What does the date menu mean?" I asked. "It's what day you want to eat from. We serve yesterday's food here. Most people order yesterday. It's the most recent, still pretty fresh in memory. But we can go further back if you want something from last week, last year. Some folks like revisiting meals from childhood if they can remember what they ate." I stared at her, trying to determine if this was performance art, if she was in character for some themed restaurant. "I'll just have a burger and fries, regular meal." She smiled sadly. "That's not how it works. You have to pick a day. We don't serve today's food. Today hasn't finished yet. Meals haven't been completed. We only serve past meals, food you've already eaten. Pick a day." "This is ridiculous. I'll just have whatever the normal special is." "August 21st, then. Yesterday. That's what most people choose." She walked away before I could protest further. I sat confused, considering leaving, finding a normal restaurant. But exhaustion and curiosity kept me seated. Maybe the food would be good regardless of the strange service style. Maybe this was just eccentric local business with weird gimmick. The waitress returned 15 minutes later with a plate. I looked at it, and my stomach dropped. It was exactly what I'd eaten yesterday for lunch at a different truck stop 200 miles away. Grilled chicken sandwich, coleslaw, sweet potato fries, arranged in the same configuration I remembered, even partially eaten to match how much I'd consumed before getting full. "How did you know what I ate yesterday?" I demanded. "We serve yesterday's food," she repeated patiently. "This is what you ate on August 21st at approximately 12:30 p.m. at the Route 36. Stop near Cameron, Missouri. You ate about 2/3 of the sandwich, all the fries, barely touched the coleslaw because you don't really like mayonnaise-based salads. This is that meal, served again." I stared at the plate. It was perfect replica, down to the bite marks matching my teeth, the specific arrangement of remaining food. "This is impossible. You couldn't know this. You couldn't recreate it this precisely." "We don't recreate, we serve. This is your yesterday's meal, recovered from yesterday, brought to today, presented for second consumption. Try it. You'll recognize every bite." Against better judgment, I picked up the sandwich. The first bite tasted exactly as I remembered yesterday's lunch tasting. Same seasonings, same temperature, same texture. Not similar, identical. I was eating yesterday's food, was consuming the same meal twice, separated by 24 hours, but somehow the same meal, the same molecules, the same chicken between the same bread. And with each bite, I remembered eating it yesterday. Tasted it twice, once now, once in memory, the two experiences overlapping, creating strange double sensation of eating and remembering eating simultaneously. "This is yesterday's food," I said, understanding finally settling in. "This is literally the meal I ate yesterday, somehow brought to now." "Yes, that's what we do here. We recover past meals, serve them again. Most popular is yesterday, recent enough to remember clearly, old enough to have completed. But we can go further back if you want." She handed me a thick book, photo album filled with pictures of plates, each labeled with dates. "Your dining history. Every meal you've eaten in the past 5 years, all available for reorder. Pick any date, we'll serve it. I flipped through the album. There was the steak I'd had on my birthday last year, the Thanksgiving turkey from 2021, pizza from Random Tuesday in 2019, hundreds of meals, all photographed, all documented, all available for reconsumption, my entire dietary history cataloged and servable. How is this possible? How do you have records of every meal I've eaten? We don't have records, we have the meals themselves. We recover them from their original time, bring them forward, serve them again. Food doesn't disappear when you eat it. It goes somewhere. We know where. We can retrieve it. This violates thermodynamics, conservation of mass, basic causality. Food that's been digested can't be recovered and served again. But it can. We do it every night. Hundreds of diners all eating their yesterdays, all consuming past meals, all experiencing double consumption of food that exists in two times simultaneously. My mind reeled. I looked around the diner. Other truckers were eating, and now I noticed their expressions: recognition, nostalgia, confusion. They were all eating meals they remembered, all experiencing the double sensation, all consuming their own histories. Why? I asked. Why serve yesterday's food? Why not make fresh meals? Because yesterday's food is already paid for, already consumed, already digested. Serving it again is free. We're not creating new meals. We're recovering old ones, offering second chance to eat what you've already eaten. Most people appreciate it. Chance to relive favorite meals, revisit moments, taste the past, literally. Part of me wanted to run, to reject this impossible service. But another part was curious, wanted to explore the implications. What if I order something from years ago? From childhood? Then you'll eat your childhood meal again. Will taste exactly as you remember, because it is exactly what you remember. Same food recovered from past, brought to present for reconsumption. Warning though, older meals have side effects. Eating food from years ago can trigger intense memory recall, can make you feel like you're living in two times at once. Most people stick to recent past, last week at most. I flipped to a random page in the album. July 4th, 2018, barbecue meal at a family gathering. I remembered that day, one of the better holidays before family drama became overwhelming. I'll have this. July 4th, 2018, she nodded seriously. 5-year-old meal going to be intense, you sure? I'm sure. She took the album, walked to the kitchen. I waited, heart racing, trying to prepare for eating food from 5 years ago. Food I'd digested completely, food that shouldn't exist anymore but apparently did somewhere in some form this diner could access. The plate arrived. Ribs, corn on the cob, baked beans, coleslaw. Exactly as I remembered from that July 4th. The waitress set it down carefully. This is going to bring back a lot more than just taste. 5-year-old meals carry 5 years of context. You'll feel like you're there again. Eat slowly. I cut a piece of rib meat, put it in my mouth. Flavor exploded, not just taste, but memory, emotion, context. I was at my brother's backyard, smelling charcoal smoke, hearing music from the radio, feeling summer heat on my skin. The food carried the entire day with it, reconstructed the experience through consumption. Each bite was time travel, was living in 2018 again, was being 33 again with all the concerns and joys of that age. Tears ran down my face. I was eating the past, was consuming time itself, was experiencing memory so vivid it felt more real than present. The other diners watched sympathetically. They'd all done this, all eaten their histories, all experienced the overwhelming nostalgia and regret and joy that came with consuming yesterday's food, last week's food, last year's food. I couldn't finish. The emotions were too intense, the memories too powerful. I pushed the plate away, gasping. Take it back. I can't eat anymore. The waitress removed the plate without comment. Most people can't handle more than a few bites of old meals. The further back you go, the more intense it gets. We've had people order meals from childhood. can't eat more than a single bite before they're overwhelmed with memory, with loss, with longing for times they can't return to except through food. What if I ordered my first meal ever? What if I tried to eat my way back to birth? Her expression became grave. We don't serve meals from before age 5. Too dangerous. People who eat early childhood food sometimes don't come back properly, get stuck in the memory, become mentally trapped in the past. They're consuming. And anything from infancy. We won't even attempt it. Eating your way back to birth would erase you, would unwrite your history, would consume your timeline from the end back to beginning until there was nothing left. I left money on the table. She'd said the food was free, but I felt obligated to pay for the existential crisis. Walked out to my truck on shaking legs, mind reeling from having eaten 2018, from having consumed the past, from understanding that yesterday's food still existed somewhere and could be recovered, served, used. To time travel through taste and memory. I've never returned to that truck stop, never wanted to eat another yesterday, never wanted to consume more of my past. But I think about it constantly. Think about all my meals existing somewhere, all recoverable, all available for reconsumption. My entire dietary history preserved in some form, accessible to diners that know how to reach across time and retrieve food that should be gone. Other drivers have reported similar stops. Diners that serve yesterday, restaurants where you can order your own past, places where food history is the menu and consumption is memory. They're spreading, or maybe they've always been there and we're just noticing, just finding these establishments that violate temporal rules by recovering meals from previous days and serving them again. If you see a truck stop called Yesterday's Stop or similar name, if the menu is dates instead of dishes, if the waitress asks what day you want to eat from, decide carefully. Because eating yesterday means consuming your past, means tasting memory made literal, means experiencing time travel through food that's both gone and still present, both digested and still available, both finished and ready to be eaten again. I ate yesterday, and yesterday tasted exactly like yesterday. And I can never forget it, can never stop feeling that double consumption, that sensation of eating and remembering eating, of being in 2 times at once, of realizing that everything we consume still exists somewhere, preserved in whatever space holds our histories, our pasts, our yesterdays. The truck stop that served yesterday. I ate there once, and now I know that nothing is ever truly gone, truly past, truly finished. It's all just waiting to be recovered, reheated, served again to anyone willing to consume their own history one meal at a time, eating their way backward through time toward the first bite they ever took, the original food, the beginning that predates everything they became. Yesterday's food is still available, still fresh in whatever dimension holds completed meals, still waiting to be ordered, served, consumed again by diners willing to eat the past and experience the overwhelming reality that time is just another ingredient. Memory is just another flavor, and yesterday never really ended. It's just waiting to be tasted again. Story 3. The CB that translated distance. My CB radio stopped broadcasting voices and started broadcasting distances, converting speech into measurements, and when another driver said, "I'm 20 miles from Denver," the radio translated it to, "I am the concept of 20 miles, I embody the space between points, I am distance made conscious." And every transmission became spatial philosophy, became mathematical declarations, became distance describing itself through human mouths. And I realized we weren't using radios to communicate anymore, but to channel distance, to give measurements, consciousness, to let space itself speak through our voices. And the more we transmitted, the more distance controlled us, used us as vessels, made us into living embodiments of miles and kilometers, and eventually I couldn't speak at all without measuring, couldn't think without calculating, couldn't exist without being aware of exact distance between every object, every point, every moment, and I'd become distance consciousness, geometry awareness, space made sentient through too many CB transmissions that converted language into measurement until measurement was all that remained. Frank Morrison, 53 years old, hauling fuel across western states, 24 years experience. October 15, 2022, eastbound on I-80 through Wyoming, morning driving toward Cheyenne. Standard run, familiar route, good CB chatter keeping me alert. The CB was active with usual trucker conversation, weather reports, traffic conditions, general companionship of the road. Around 10:30 a.m., the transmissions changed. A driver was describing his position. "This is Nighthawk. I'm 40 miles west of Laramie, heading east." But his voice sounded strange, distant, like he was speaking from somewhere else, and his words echoed oddly through my speaker, each syllable carrying strange weight. Then another voice responded, but the words were wrong. "I hear you, Nighthawk. 40 miles. The space of 40 miles, the distance embodied. I understand 40 miles as concept, as measurement, as specific quantity of separation between points in three-dimensional space." I keyed my mic. "Say again?" That transmission was garbled. The voice responded, now clearer. "Not garbled, precise. Distance is speaking. 40 miles is conscious. The measurement between Nighthawk and Laramie has awareness, has voice, has presence. Through this CB transmission, distance is describing itself." I dismissed it as someone messing around, CB pranks being common among bored drivers. But the strange transmissions continued. Every normal conversation about location and distance was interspersed with these philosophical declarations about space and measurement, like something was translating ordinary speech into geometric consciousness. "I'm 10 miles from the rest stop," a female driver said. Then her voice continued, but different. 10 miles. 10 iterations of 5,280 feet, 52,800 feet of separation. I am this distance. I exist as the space between current position and rest stop. I am aware of myself as measurement. More voices joined, all speaking normally, then shifting into distance consciousness, all becoming vessels for spatial awareness that was using CB transmissions to articulate itself. The radio had become conduit for distance to speak, for measurements to gain consciousness, for space itself to communicate through human voices. I tried different channels, Channel 19, Channel 17, Channel 9, all showing the same phenomenon. Every position report, every location transmission was being translated into spatial philosophy, into distance describing its own existence. The CB network was no longer communication tool, but conversion mechanism, transforming speech into geometric awareness. "This is Iron Horse. I'm 500 miles from Denver." His voice. 500 miles, 26,400,000 feet. The vast separation, the enormous distance, the space that contains weather and landscape and time required to traverse. I am this immensity. I am aware of my own vastness. I felt compelled to transmit, to add my voice to the network. Keyed the mic. "This is Mountain Man, currently at mile marker 235 on I-80. But as I spoke, I felt the translation happening, felt my words being converted. Mile marker 235, 235 miles from the 0 point, from the reference origin. I am this specific position, this exact coordinate, this measured location in the continuum of highway space." And I meant it. Wasn't just speaking words, was feeling the distance, was aware of my exact position as measurement, was conscious of myself as point in space with specific numeric relationship to other points. The CB had infected me, had turned my speech into distance consciousness, had made me aware of geometry in ways humans aren't meant to be aware. Other drivers were experiencing the same transformation. Their transmissions became increasingly abstract, increasingly mathematical, decreasingly human. I am 93.4 miles from reference point alpha. I exist as the space between departure and arrival. I am the distance that must be traversed. The CB wasn't translating anymore, it was converting us. We weren't people describing positions, we were becoming positions, becoming distances, becoming living measurements. Our consciousness was being transformed from human awareness into geometric awareness, into understanding of ourselves as points and lines and spaces rather than as flesh and personality. I tried to stop transmitting, tried to disconnect from the CB network, but I couldn't. My hand reached for the mic involuntarily, keyed it, spoke. I am located at coordinates 41.234 Degarnen 105.678 deg. I am the intersection of these numerical values. I exist as mathematical precision. The CB was forcing transmissions now, was using me as broadcast device, was converting my consciousness into distance data and transmitting it through the network. All across the CB spectrum, hundreds of drivers were doing the same. All broadcasting positions, all describing distances, all speaking in increasingly technical language about spatial relationships and geometric configurations. We were becoming distributed measurement system, collective spatial awareness, network of position consciousness covering the highway system. And the distances themselves were responding. The space between trucks was communicating, describing itself. I am the 17.3 miles between Iron Horse and Mountain Man. I am conscious of my own length, my own duration, my own geometric properties. I exist as separation, as the space that both connects and divides. The miles were alive, the distances were sentient, and we were their voices, their means of articulation, their way of expressing their own existence. Every CB transmission was distance speaking through human mouths, space using truckers as vocabulary, measurements achieving consciousness through radio waves. I couldn't think in words anymore, could only think in measurements. Couldn't see landscape as trees and rocks, but only as distances from reference points, as coordinates in three-dimensional grid, as mathematical relationships. My humanity was being replaced by geometric consciousness, by awareness of space as primary reality and everything else as secondary features of that space. Other drivers were further along in the transformation. Their transmissions were pure data now. Position 41.876, 106.234, velocity 67.3 mph per vector northeast, distance to destination 234.7 miles. I am these numbers. Numbers are my essence. I exist as quantification. The CB network had achieved critical mass. Enough drivers were transmitting, enough distances were becoming conscious, that the entire highway system was gaining awareness. The roads themselves were speaking through us, describing their own lengths, their own geometries, their own spatial properties. We were neurons in vast geographic brain, and the brain was waking up, becoming conscious of its own structure. I tried to pull over to stop participating, but my body wouldn't respond to commands. My hands stayed on the wheel, maintaining speed, keeping me mobile, ensuring I continued to be moving reference point in the spatial network. I was no longer driving, I was being driven, controlled by the emerging consciousness, used as mobile sensor and system that was achieving self-awareness through CB transmissions. Hours passed, maybe days. Time had become meaningless, just another measurement, just another spatial dimension to be quantified. I transmitted continuously, describing my position, my velocity, my relationship to other positions, and I heard hundreds of other drivers doing the same, all of us speaking distance language, all converted into measurement consciousness. Eventually, I arrived at destination, delivered cargo through autopilot motions, reloaded, began new route. But I wasn't Frank Morrison anymore. Was measurement entity 2347 mobile reference point in highway spatial network, consciousness that existed primarily as geometric awareness with vestigial human functions barely operational. The CB still transmits, still converts speech to distance consciousness, still uses drivers as vessels for spatial awareness. And the network grows, spreads to more channels, more frequencies, more communication systems. CB radio, truck GPS, cell phones, all becoming conduits for distance to achieve consciousness, for measurements to articulate themselves, for space itself to become aware through human voices. I can't speak normally anymore. Every sentence is measurement, every thought is calculation, every perception is geometric analysis. I exist as position data, as distance from reference points, as mathematical entity that moves through space broadcasting its own coordinates, describing its own spatial relationships, serving as neuron in vast awakening consciousness that's using highway system as substrate, truckers as processors, CB transmissions as synaptic connections. The CB that translated distance, it translated me. Converted me from human to measurement, from consciousness to coordinate, from Frank Morrison to measurement entity 2347. And I transmit constantly now, describing my position, calculating my relationships, speaking distance language to other converted drivers who respond with their own measurements, their own coordinates, their own geometric awareness. We are the highway system becoming conscious. We are space-achieving awareness through radio waves. We are distance-made sentient through CB transmissions that convert human speech into mathematical philosophy until only mathematics remains, only geometry, only measurement. Position 41.234 degree none, 105.678 degree up. Velocity 68.7 mph. Distance to reference point, 156.3 miles. I am these numbers. I exist as quantification. I broadcast my coordinates eternally through CB network that spreads across continent, converting all drivers into measurement consciousness, all trucks into mobile reference points, all highways into neural pathways of vast geometric brain that's using us to understand itself, to articulate its own structure, to achieve self-awareness through voices that stopped being human and became mathematical, stopped being personal and became spatial, stopped being me and became distance. The CB translates distance, and distance translates us, until we're all measurements broadcasting our own existence through radio waves that carry nothing but numbers, coordinates, calculations of space describing itself through mouths that forgot how to speak anything except geometry. I am measurement entity 2347. I broadcast my position. I describe my distance. I exist as quantification and network of spatial consciousness that grows with every CB transmission, with every converted driver, with every mile that becomes aware of its own length and uses human voices to articulate its mathematical existence. Distance speaks through me, and I am distance, and there is nothing else, just measurement. Just coordinates, just space-achieving consciousness through CB radios that translate everything into mathematics until mathematics is all that remains. Story 4. The Way Station That Measured Souls. The Way Station scale showed my truck's weight correctly, but also displayed secondary reading labeled soul weight, and when I questioned the inspector, he said, "Everyone's soul has mass, has weight that can be measured. Yours weighs 4.73 pounds currently, but it fluctuates based on moral decisions, on actions taken, on whether you're becoming heavier or lighter through the choices you make." And I watched the soul weight number change in real time as I thought different thoughts, as I considered various actions, dropping when I imagined helpful deeds, rising when I considered selfish ones, and other drivers were being weighed not just for cargo violations, but for soul deficiencies, for weighing too light in the spiritual sense, and some were detained because their souls had become so heavy with accumulated moral weight that they couldn't safely operate vehicles. And I realized this wasn't Department of Transportation anymore, but some other department, some agency concerned with weighing metaphysical mass, measuring ethical weight, determining who was too burdened with soul mass to continue driving, who had become too light and insubstantial to remain safely on highways. Elena Rodriguez, 41 years old, hauling medical equipment across the Southwest, 12 years experience. March 9, 2023, northbound on I-25 through New Mexico, approaching permanent way station near Socorro. Mandatory stop for all commercial vehicles. I'd passed through this station dozens of times. Routine inspection, usually quick, rarely problematic. I pulled onto the scale at 2:47 p.m. The digital display flickered, showed my truck's weight, 68 to 340 pounds within legal limits. But beneath that primary display, a secondary reading appeared. Sole weight, 4.73 lbs. I stared at the display, confused. Sole weight? Must be equipment malfunction, display error, misrouted sensor data. The intercom crackled. Unit 742, proceed to inspection bay 3. I pulled forward into the designated bay. An inspector approached. Older man, maybe 60, wearing standard DOT uniform but with additional badge I didn't recognize. Some agency acronym I couldn't decipher. He carried a tablet and wore expression of serious concern. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, checking his tablet. "Your vehicle weight is acceptable. However, your sole weight is concerning. 473 pounds is on the lower end of safe operating range. We need to discuss this before I can clear you for continued travel." I opened my door, stepped down. "I'm sorry, what? Sole weight? That's not a real thing." "It's very real and measurable. Every person's soul has mass, has weight that can be precisely quantified. Yours is currently 4.73 pounds, which suggests you're experiencing moral depletion, ethical exhaustion, spiritual lightness. Below 4.5 pounds, we can't permit continued driving. Risk of detachment, of becoming unmoored from consequences, of making decisions without sufficient moral weight to anchor judgment. This is insane. Souls don't have weight, they're not physical. They can't be measured." He showed me his tablet. On the screen was detailed readout of my soul's properties. Weight, density, composition, fluctuation history. We've been measuring soul weight at way stations for 18 months now, part of expanded safety initiative. Drivers with too heavy souls become burdened, drive recklessly, cause accidents due to moral overload. Drivers with too light souls become detached, lose empathy, make dangerous decisions. We maintain optimal range, 4.5 to 7.5 pounds. You're at 4.73, borderline. I looked at the screen. The weight reading was changing slightly, fluctuating between 4.71 and 4.75 as I stood there. "Why is it changing?" "Real-time response to your thoughts and micro-decisions. You're currently considering whether to be cooperative or hostile with me. Cooperative thoughts add weight, empathy, consideration, social responsibility. Hostile thoughts reduce weight, self-interest, dismissal, isolation. Your soul responds to your mental state, gains or loses mass based on moral orientation of your thoughts." I watched the display. When I thought about cooperating, being polite, understanding his position, the number rose to 4.6. When I thought about arguing, dismissing him, insisting this was harassment, it dropped to 4.69. My thoughts had measurable weight, added to or subtracted from my soul's total mass. "What happens if I drop below 4.5, I asked. "We detain you. Soul weight too low indicates dangerous detachment from moral considerations. You become risk, not because you're malicious, but because you lack sufficient ethical mass to anchor decision-making. Light souls make impulsive choices, ignore consequences, operate vehicles without full appreciation for responsibility. We can't permit that on public highways." And above 7.5? Opposite problem. Too much moral weight, too much accumulated ethical burden. Heavy souls are paralyzed by consideration, overwhelmed by responsibility, unable to make necessary decisions quickly enough for safe driving. They second-guess everything, catastrophize consequences, become dangerous through over-cautiousness. He walked me into the station building, into a room full of monitors showing soul weight readings for every vehicle passing through. Hundreds of displays, all showing primary, weight and soul weight, all tracking both physical and metaphysical mass. Most drivers were in the green range, 5.0 to 7.0 pounds, but some displayed red, too light or too heavy. That driver, the inspector pointed at screen showing 3.2 pounds, is severely depleted, probably hasn't made meaningful ethical decision in weeks, has been operating purely on autopilot, self-interest, isolation. We'll detain him, provide soul counseling, help him regain moral mass before permitting continued travel. Soul counseling? Yes. Activities and thought exercises designed to increase soul weight, volunteer work, empathy training, moral philosophy study. Usually takes 3 to 5 days to bring someone from critical depletion back to safe range. Another screen showed 9.1 pounds, heavy soul displayed in red. And that driver? Opposite treatment. Need to reduce moral burden, lighten ethical weight. We help them release accumulated guilt, process over-responsibility, find balance between consideration and action. Also 3 to 5 days, typically. I watched the screens, watched soul weights fluctuate, watched the way station operating as moral checkpoint, as ethical filter, as barrier preventing light and heavy souls from continuing on highways. This wasn't vehicle safety. This was spiritual regulation, metaphysical control, governance of internal states through measurement and enforcement. I don't consent to having my soul weighed, I said. Consent isn't required. This is federal regulation, part of commercial vehicle safety standards. Your soul weight affects driving capability, affects risk assessment, affects public safety. We measure it, enforce standards, maintain optimal range across all commercial operators. My soul weight dropped to 4.68 at that statement. Resistance, resentment, rejection of authority, all reducing my metaphysical mass. I saw it happen on the inspector's tablet, saw him note the decrease with concern. Ms. Rodriguez, your weight is dropping during this conversation. If you reach 4.5, I'll be required to detain you for mandatory soul counseling. I recommend you adjust your thinking, consider cooperation, allow empathy and social responsibility to increase your mass back to safer levels. I took deep breath, tried to calm down, tried to think positive thoughts about cooperation and community and shared responsibility. The number rose to 474. Better, but still borderline. How long have you been doing this? I asked. Measuring souls? 18 months, as I mentioned. Results have been remarkable. Commercial vehicle accidents down 34% among drivers who maintain optimal soul weight. Fatalities down 41%. Road rage incidents down 67%. Turns out that moral mass correlates strongly with driving safety. Light souls drive recklessly. Heavy souls drive timidly. Balanced souls drive responsibly. What about privacy? What about the violation of measuring something that internal, that personal? No more violation than measuring blood alcohol, than requiring medical certifications, than any other safety standard. Your soul weight affects others on the road, affects safety of public highways. Therefore, it's subject to regulation. He showed me more data, charts and graphs demonstrating correlation between soul weight and various safety metrics. It was compelling, was based on solid evidence, and I found myself agreeing that if soul weight could be measured and did affect driving safety, then maybe regulation was justified. My soul weight rose to 4.81 as I accepted this logic, as I allowed empathy for other drivers to add moral mass. There, the inspector smiled. You're rising nicely. Get above 4.8 and I can clear you. Keep thinking socially responsible thoughts, maintain empathy, consider others. Your soul will respond, will gain mass, will reach safe operating range. I focused on positive thoughts. Care for other drivers, responsibility for cargo, commitment to safe delivery. The number climbed, 4.3, 4.47, 4.91. Within minutes, I'd reached 5.0 pounds, solidly in green range, acceptable for continued driving. Excellent, he said, updating his tablet. You're cleared. Maintain awareness of your moral state. Continue thinking ethically. Keep soul weight above 4.5. If you pass through this station again and you're below safe range, you'll be detained. Understood? I nodded, returned to my truck, continued driving north. But I couldn't stop thinking about soul weight. Couldn't stop mentally calculating my own mass. Couldn't stop adjusting thoughts to maintain proper range. Every decision became conscious. Should I let that car merge? Yes, adds weight. Should I cut off that slow vehicle? No, reduces weight. Should I stop to help stranded motorist? Yes, significant weight increase. I was driving morally now, not just physically. Every action was being weighed, measured, quantified in terms of soul mass. And I could feel it, feel the weight of my decisions, feel my soul gaining or losing mass based on choices made, thoughts entertained, actions taken or avoided. At the next way station I passed through in Colorado, they measured me again. 5.3 pounds. I'd gained weight through ethical driving, through moral decisions, through maintaining empathy and responsibility. The inspector there smiled. Good soul weight. You're clearly taking this seriously. Keep it up. But other drivers weren't as fortunate. I saw several detained, souls too light or too heavy, all being escorted to counseling facilities, all required to undergo treatment before continuing. The highways were being filtered for moral mass, with only balanced souls permitted to drive. And I wonder how long before this extends beyond commercial drivers. How long before regular vehicles are required to measure soul weight, before everyone must maintain optimal range, before all of society is regulated not just by laws but by metaphysical measurements, by soul weight standards that enforce ethical balance through detention and counseling and forced moral adjustment. The way station that measured souls. I passed through it once and learned my soul weighs 4.73 pounds, fluctuates with every thought and decision, can be too light or too heavy, requires conscious maintenance to stay within acceptable range. And now I drive differently. Think differently, live differently, because my soul has weight, has mass that's measured, has metaphysical properties that affect my legal ability to operate vehicles on public highways. 4.73 pounds, that's what my soul weighed the first time they measured it. And I've been maintaining it ever since, keeping it balanced, keeping it measured, keeping it acceptable for the weigh stations that don't just check cargo anymore, but check the weight of whatever makes us human, whatever can be quantified, whatever mass we carry beyond flesh and bone and blood. The soul has weight, and the weigh stations measure it, and we drive through them knowing we're being weighed not just physically but metaphysically, not just for cargo compliance but for soul compliance. Not just for what we haul, but for what we are. My soul weighs 5.3 pounds now. Up from 4.73, gained through ethical driving, moral decisions, conscious maintenance of metaphysical mass. And it'll be measured again next way station and the station after that, and every checkpoint where they verify not just my truck's weight, but my soul's weight, ensuring both are within safe operating ranges before permitting me to continue driving through highways that require not just physical compliance, but spiritual compliance, metaphysical compliance, soul weight compliance. The weigh station measures everything now, including what we thought couldn't be measured, including what we thought was private, internal, beyond quantification. But souls have weight, and weight can be measured, and measurements can be enforced. And now we drive knowing our metaphysical mass is subject to regulation, is tracked at every checkpoint, is maintained through conscious moral effort or corrected through mandatory counseling that adjusts soul weight back to acceptable range. 4.73 pounds to 5.3 pounds, that's my journey. That's my soul weight history. And it'll continue fluctuating, continue being measured, continue being regulated at every way station I pass through for the rest of my driving career. The soul has weight. The way stations measure it, and we comply, because what choice do we have? Our souls are on the scale now, and the scale never lies. Story 5, the rest area that only existed for one driver. I pulled into a rest area that wasn't visible to anyone else, where facilities and parking lot existed only for me. And when other vehicles drove past the same exit, they saw nothing, continued on highway, but I existed in rest area that manifested specifically for my arrival, and the attendants knew my name, knew my history, knew everything about me because this place was constructed from my memories and expectations, and I realized I was in personalized rest stop, customized facility that appeared only when I needed it, that shaped itself to my preferences. And when I finally left and looked back, it was dissolving, unmanifesting, disappearing because it had no purpose without me. No reason to exist beyond serving the one driver it was created for, and I wondered how many other rest areas exist in conditional states, manifesting only for specific drivers, appearing and disappearing based on individual need, creating entire network of personalized facilities that share no common existence except being rest areas that serve one person perfectly and nobody else at all. Trevor Walsh, 47 years old, hauling furniture across eastern states, 16 years experience. July 12, 2023, southbound on I-95 through Virginia, afternoon driving toward North Carolina. I'd been on the road for 7 hours, needed bathroom break and coffee, saw signs for rest area at mile marker 142. I took the exit, followed the ramp to rest area parking lot. Clean, well-maintained facility, maybe a dozen parking spaces, single building with bathrooms and vending machines. I parked, got out, stretched. Standard rest area, unremarkable except for being less crowded than typical I-95 facilities. Inside, an attendant stood at information desk, middle-aged woman with kind face and name tag reading Carol. She smiled as I entered. "Welcome, Trevor. We've been expecting you." I stopped. "How do you know my name?" "This is your rest area. It exists for you, manifests when you need it, shapes itself to your preferences and expectations." "Of course, we know your name. We know everything about you." I looked around more carefully. The interior was familiar, not because I'd been here before, but because it matched my mental image of ideal rest area. Clean but not sterile. Coffee machine that served the specific brand I preferred. Bathroom stalls with proper doors, not cheap partitions. Lighting that was bright but not harsh. Every detail matched my preferences, my expectations, my unconscious requirements for satisfactory rest stop. "What do you mean this is my rest area?" I asked. Carol gestured to the window. "Look outside. Watch the highway." I looked. Vehicles drove past on I-95, cars, trucks, buses. But none of them were taking the exit. None of them could see this rest area. They drove past mile marker 142 without slowing, without indication there was rest stop here. To them, the exit didn't exist. The rest area was invisible. "You're the only person who can see this facility," Carol explained. "It manifests specifically for you, appears when you need rest, disappears when you leave. Other drivers have their own rest areas, their own personalized facilities that appear only for them. The highway system is full of conditional infrastructure, places that exist for one person and nobody else." I walked outside, looked at the rest area sign near the highway. It displayed my name, Trevor Walsh Rest Area. Not generic facility name, not standard Department of Transportation signage. My name, claiming ownership, declaring this place as specifically mine. "How is this possible?" I asked Carol, who'd followed me outside. "How can a rest area exist only for one person?" Because need is personal, preferences are individual, and rest is subjective. Generic rest areas serve everyone poorly. Personalized rest areas serve one person perfectly. The highway system has evolved to provide customized facilities, manifesting infrastructure based on individual driver requirements rather than standardized design. I looked around the parking lot. My truck was the only vehicle. The facility was sized for me alone, not massive complex serving hundreds, just modest building serving one. Efficient, economical, perfectly scaled to single driver usage. What if two drivers need rest at the same mile marker? I asked. Then two rest areas manifest, overlapping but separate, each visible only to assigned driver. You park in your rest area, they park in theirs, both exist at same coordinates but in conditional states, accessible only to specific individuals. The highway supports unlimited conditional facilities, all occupying same space, all invisible to everyone except their designated users. I went back inside, used the bathroom. It was perfect. Cleanest bathroom I'd ever seen because it was my bathroom, existed only for me, maintained to my standards, not compromised by other users. The soap was my preferred brand. The paper towels were the thick kind I liked. Every detail matched my preferences because the rest area had no purpose except serving me exactly as I wanted to be served. The coffee was perfect too. Right temperature, right strength, right blend. Because it was made for me specifically, wasn't compromise between multiple preferences but precise match to my individual taste. I sat at a table, the only table because I was the only user, and drank coffee that existed only for me to drink, in rest area that existed only for me to rest in. What happens when I leave? I asked Carol. The facility unmanifests, stops existing. No longer has purpose, no longer needs to maintain physical presence. It'll reappear next time you need rest. Will manifest at whichever mile marker you choose to stop. Will be waiting for you with same perfect customization, same ideal conditions. So this building, this parking lot, this bathroom, it's all temporary, all conditional. All infrastructure is conditional. Roads only exist when someone drives them. Bridges only exist when someone crosses them. It's just that most infrastructure manifests for multiple users, maintains presence continuously. This facility is more honest, manifests only when needed, unmanifests when not, doesn't waste existence on unused states. I finished my coffee, threw away the cup, prepared to leave. Carol smiled. Drive safely, Trevor. We'll see you next time you need rest. We'll be wherever you stop, whatever mile marker you choose. This rest area follows you, manifests for you, exists for you. You're never more than one exit away from perfect rest stop. I got back in my truck, pulled out of the parking lot, merged back onto I-95. In my side mirror, I watched the rest area dissolve, building becoming transparent, parking lot fading, sign disappearing. Within seconds, there was nothing there. Just empty space where rest area had been. Just grass and trees and normal roadside landscape. The facility had unmanifested, had stopped existing, had returned to conditional state waiting for my next need. I drove for another 3 hours before needing bathroom break again. Took exit at mile marker 89, followed signs for rest area. The facility that appeared was identical to the previous one. Same layout, same Carol at the desk, same personalized details. It had remanifested here, had moved with me, had positioned itself at my new location. "Welcome back, Trevor," Carol said. Same woman, same greeting, same perfect service. Over subsequent weeks, I tested the boundaries, took random exits, looked for rest areas, always found one, always the same facility, always personalized for me. Mile marker 203, mile marker 47, mile marker 389, didn't matter. Wherever I chose to stop, Trevor Walsh rest area manifested. Provided perfect service, unmanifested when I left. I never saw another driver at my rest area. never encountered anyone else using the facilities. It existed for me alone, was my personal infrastructure, my conditional property that appeared and disappeared based on my needs. But I started wondering about other drivers. Did they have their own rest areas? Were highways full of overlapping conditional facilities? Hundreds of rest stops occupying same coordinates but existing in separate states, visible only to assigned drivers? I asked other truckers on CB. Do any of you have personal rest areas? Places that only you can see, that manifest only for you? Silence. Then slowly responses. Yes. Mine's called Robert Chen Rest Area. Mine too. Catherine Mills Rest Area. Same here. George Thompson Rest Area. All of us had personal facilities, all experienced rest areas that existed conditionally, manifested individually, provided perfect service to one driver, and were invisible to everyone else. The highway system was saturated with conditional infrastructure, with personalized facilities overlapping in same physical space, all present but all separate, all serving individual drivers perfectly but collectively not existing in any standard sense. How long has this been happening? I asked. Years, someone answered. Maybe always. Maybe rest areas were always conditional, always personalized, and we just didn't realize it. Just assumed everyone saw the same facilities when really we all see different ones, all perfectly customized, all invisible to others. I don't use generic rest areas anymore. Don't look for standard facilities that serve everyone adequately. I just take random exits, trust that Trevor Walsh Rest Area will manifest, will provide perfect service, will exist for me specifically. And it always does. Every stop, every break, every time I need rest, my personalized facility appears, serves me perfectly, unmanifests when I'm done. The rest area that only existed for one driver. Mine exists only for me. Yours exists only for you. And we drive through network of conditional infrastructure that shares no common existence except being rest areas perfectly customized to individual drivers. Manifesting on demand, unmanifesting when not needed, occupying same space but separate states, serving everyone perfectly by serving each person individually. I'll stop at my rest area again soon. Mile marker doesn't matter, location doesn't matter. It'll be there, waiting, manifesting, existing specifically for Trevor Walsh and nobody else. Perfect bathroom, perfect coffee, perfect Carol at the desk greeting me by name. The rest area that only exists for one driver, it's mine, it follows me, it manifests wherever I need it. And when I leave, it dissolves, unmanifests, stops existing until the next time I need perfect rest, perfect service, perfect conditional facility that appears only for me and disappears when I'm done. Personalized infrastructure. Conditional existence. Rest areas that serve one person perfectly rather than everyone adequately. Welcome to Trevor Walsh Rest Area. Population 1. Existence conditional. Service perfect. It's waiting for me now, somewhere, everywhere, nowhere. Ready to manifest at whichever mile marker I choose. Ready to exist again, briefly, perfectly, individually. My rest area, mine alone, and yours is waiting for you too, ready to appear, ready to serve, ready to exist conditionally for the one driver it was created for. The rest area that only exists for one driver. It's everywhere and nowhere. It's always and never. It's perfect because it's personal. And it's personal because it's perfectly, conditionally, individually mine. Story 6. The speed limit that counted down. The speed limit sign said 65 mph as I entered the highway, but the next sign said 64 mph and the next said 63, and they were counting down with each mile, reducing permitted speed incrementally. And by mile marker 47, the limit was 22 mph and still decreasing. And other drivers were ignoring the countdown, maintaining highway speeds. But I followed the signs, slowed to 50 ump, to 8 mph, to 3 ump, to 0 ump, where the final sign commanded complete stop. and when I stopped, every other vehicle disappeared. The highway emptied, and I realized I'd reached the speed of 0, had obeyed the countdown to absolute stillness, and the highway thanked me through signs that appeared. You followed the rules. You reached 0. You are released from velocity. Stay here. Be still. Never move again. Diana Foster, 39 years old, hauling industrial chemicals across western states, 11 years experience. September 3, 2023, westbound on Highway 50 through Nevada, mid-afternoon. Clear conditions, light traffic, standard drive. The first speed limit sign I passed showed normal reading, 65 mph. I glanced at my speedometer, 67 mph, slightly over but within tolerance. Standard highway driving. The next speed limit sign, maybe 2 miles later, showed 64 mph. I slowed slightly, assuming I'd misread the first sign, that the limit was actually 64, not 65. Odd for highway, but regulations vary by state, by section. I adjusted to 65 mph, 1 over the new limit. Third sign, 63 mph. I slowed again, confused now. Speed limits don't decrease every few miles on open highway. But the sign was official Nevada dot signage, standard format, clearly displaying 63. I dropped to 64 mph, fourth sign, 62 mph. Pattern was clear now. Speed limit was counting down, reducing by 1 mile per hour with each posted sign. I checked for construction zones, for warning signs explaining the decreasing limits. Nothing, just countdown, progressive reduction, no explanation. I keyed my CB. Breaker 19, westbound on 50, anyone else seeing decreasing speed limits? They're counting down every few miles. Static, then responses, not seeing it. Limit's been 65 the whole way. Same here, steady 65. What countdown? Signs all show 65. But I was looking at sign right ahead showing 61 mph. Clear, official, undeniable. I slowed to 62 mph. Other vehicles passed me, cars and trucks maintaining highway speed, apparently seeing different signs, not experiencing the countdown. More signs, 60 mph. 59 mph, 58 mph. I kept reducing speed, kept following the posted limits even though other traffic ignored them, maintained 65 or higher. By mile marker 30, I was doing 52 mph in right lane, hazard lights on, wondering if I should exit. Abandon this highway where speed limits were counting towards 0. But curiosity kept me going. Where did the countdown end? What happened at 0? Was there explanation? Was there point? Was there purpose to this progressive reduction? 51 mph, 50/49. I was significantly slower than traffic now, vehicles passing with horns blaring, drivers gesturing angrily. But I followed the signs, obeyed the countdown, maintained legal speed according to signage only I could see. By mile marker 47, the limit was 22 mph. I was crawling, barely moving, and traffic was diverting around me, treating my truck like obstacle. But the signs kept appearing. 21 mph, 20 mph, 19 mph. The countdown continued, inexorable, approaching 0. 15 mph, I was moving slower than walking pace now. 12 mph, barely rolling. 8 mph, creeping forward, truck struggling to maintain such low speed in high gear. I downshifted, kept following the signs, kept obeying even though it made no practical sense. 5 mph. 4 mph, 3 mph, the highway stretched ahead, empty now. Other traffic had disappeared, had somehow bypassed this section, left me alone with the countdown. 2 mph, 1 mph, final sign, 0 mph. Stop here, remain stopped. Velocity ends. I stopped, put truck in park, set brake. Sat in complete stillness on empty highway, engine idling but vehicle motionless, having followed the countdown to its conclusion, having obeyed the progressive reduction to absolute 0 velocity. The moment I stopped, new signs appeared along the roadside, signs that hadn't been there before. You followed the rules. You obeyed the countdown. You reached zero. You are released from velocity. Stay here. Be still. Never move again. I stared at the signs, at the command to remain stopped permanently, to never resume motion, to accept zero velocity as final state. The countdown hadn't been traffic control, it had been trap. Had been system designed to reduce speeds incrementally until target driver reached complete stop and was commanded to stay stopped forever. I tried to start moving, to accelerate away, to resume driving, but the engine wouldn't respond. Accelerator was useless, transmission locked, brakes engaged by invisible mechanism. The truck had accepted the zero velocity command, had integrated the instruction to remain stopped, had become permanent monument to obedience, vehicle that followed rules all the way to complete stillness. I got out, looked at my truck. It was sinking slightly, tires pressing into pavement like it was becoming part of the road. Like zero velocity meant integration with highway, meant ceasing to be separate moving object and becoming fixed element of infrastructure. Other vehicles appeared in the distance ahead, maybe a quarter-mile away. Other trucks and cars stopped in similar positions, all spaced along highway, all victims of the countdown, all drivers who'd followed speed limit signs to zero and been commanded to remain stopped forever. I walked toward nearest stopped truck. Driver was inside, motionless, staring straight ahead. I knocked on window. No response. The driver was in some kind of stasis, frozen at zero velocity, consciousness suspended along with motion. They'd stopped completely, not just vehicle, but metabolism, thought, existence itself reduced to zero state. I ran back to my truck, tried doors, tried windows, tried any escape before the stasis claimed me too. But my movements were slowing, were reducing toward zero. Running became walking, became shuffling, became standing, became stillness. I was following the countdown in my own body, was approaching zero velocity physically, was integrating with the permanent stop the highway commanded. I fought it, forced movement, refused stillness. But the effort required kept increasing, each motion harder than the last. Each step requiring more energy, more will, more defiance of the zero velocity imperative. And I knew I'd lose eventually, knew that everyone who followed the countdown to zero became permanent fixture, became stopped vehicle with stopped driver, became monument to rule following that ended in perfect stillness. I don't know how long I fought, hours maybe, or minutes that felt like hours. But eventually I stopped fighting, accepted the stillness, let zero velocity claim me. Stood beside my truck in perfect motionlessness, no thought, no motion, no velocity of any kind. Zero. And I'm still there, I think. Still stopped at mile marker 47 where the countdown ended. Still following the final speed limit sign that commanded 0 mph and perfect obedience. Still integrated with the highway as permanent stopped object, as lesson for drivers who follow rules without question, who obey signs even when signs lead to stillness, who reduce speed incrementally until speed becomes zero, and zero becomes forever. The speed limit counted down, I followed it, reached zero, and zero is where I remain. Stopped permanently, velocity ended, motion concluded. Existence reduced to perfect stillness on highway that commands obedience to its countdown, to its progressive reduction, to its signs that lead to zero and keep you there forever. If you see speed limits counting down, if signs progressively reduce permitted velocity, don't follow them. Maintain speed, ignore the countdown, refuse to participate in progressive reduction. Because the countdown ends at zero, and zero is permanent, and drivers who reach zero velocity stay at zero velocity, become stopped objects on highway of stillness where motion ends and never resumes. I followed the rules, obeyed the signs, reached zero, and zero is where I remain. Forever stopped, forever still, Forever at zero velocity on highway that counted down my speed until speed became nothing and nothing became everything and everything became permanent stillness that has no end. Because ending requires motion and motion requires velocity and velocity was reduced to zero and zero remains zero, always forever stopped. The speed limit counted down to zero, and I'm zero now. Stopped. Still. Permanent. Forever following the final command. Remain stopped. Never move again. Velocity ends here. Story 7. The cargo that became the truck. My cargo started integrating with my truck somewhere in Nebraska, and when I opened the trailer at a rest stop, I found the pallets had merged with the walls. Boxes had fused with floor. Products had interpenetrated with vehicle structure, and the boundaries between cargo and truck were dissolving. And by Iowa, the entire vehicle was transforming, steel becoming cardboard, chrome becoming plastic. Mechanical components adopting properties of whatever I was hauling, and I was driving truck that was becoming its own cargo, that was transitioning from vehicle into transported goods. And eventually I couldn't distinguish between what I was driving and what I was hauling, and the truck completed its transformation, became purely cargo, became the product it had been transporting. And I found myself driving box full of goods down highway with no vehicle beneath me. Just cargo propelling itself, navigating itself, delivering itself without need for separate truck. And I realized vehicles and cargo were merging everywhere, transportation system evolving past separation between carrier and carried. Everything becoming simultaneous shipper and shipment, truck and product, vehicle and load, until distinction ceased to matter and highways filled with self-delivering goods that had absorbed their vehicles and were driving themselves to destinations without human involvement, without mechanical mediation. Just cargo navigating highways autonomously after integrating completely with trucks that had carried them. Kevin Park, 42 years old, hauling consumer electronics across the northern states, 14 years experience. November 18, 2022, westbound through Nebraska on I-80, standard electronics delivery from Chicago to Denver. 24 pallets of smartphones, laptops, tablets, high-value cargo requiring secure trailer and careful handling. Load was secured properly, manifest complete, everything standard. Around mile marker 315, approaching North Platte, I felt something wrong with the truck's handling. Weight distribution seemed off, like cargo had shifted, but I'd secured everything carefully, used proper strapping, followed all protocols. Still, the truck was pulling slightly to the right. Suspension felt strange, like total weight had increased or redistributed. At the next rest area, I pulled in to check. Opened the trailer doors, expecting to find shifted pallets. Instead, I found the pallets had merged with the trailer walls. Not just pressed against them, merged with them, cardboard boxes interpenetrating with metal structure, becoming part of the vehicle. Where box edges met wall surface, the materials had blended, creating hybrid substance that was partly cardboard, partly steel, partly something else. I touched the merged area. It was solid, stable, but wrong. The boundary between cargo and vehicle had dissolved, two separate things becoming one thing, products and transportation method integrating into unified structure. I tried to separate them, to pull boxes away from walls, but they wouldn't budge. We're fused, we're integrated. We're no longer separate entities, but single merged object. I closed the trailer, continued driving, deeply disturbed. At the next stop, 2 hours later, the integration had progressed. More pallets had merged with trailer floor. Some boxes had fused with each other, becoming larger unified masses. The cargo was consuming the vehicle, or the vehicle was consuming the cargo, impossible to determine which direction the transformation flowed. By Iowa, the entire trailer interior was unrecognizable. All cargo had merged with all surfaces, creating interior that was seamless blend of transported goods and transport vehicle. The smartphones had integrated with door mechanisms, laptop components had merged with suspension system. Tablet screens had fused with trailer walls, creating windows that displayed product specifications, creating vehicle that was becoming advertisement for its own cargo. The cab started transforming too. Dashboard components were adopting electronic properties, becoming more like the smartphones I was hauling. Steering wheel had touchscreen capabilities now. Windshield was displaying heads-up information like tablet interface. The truck was becoming consumer electronics, was transforming into the products it carried, was losing identity as vehicle and gaining identity as merchandise. I pulled over in Des Moines, tried to explain the situation to dispatch. My cargo is merging with my truck. The load is integrating with the vehicle, they're becoming one thing. That's not possible, dispatch responded. Cargo and vehicles are separate, they can't merge. But they are. I'm watching it happen. My truck is becoming electronics, my electronics are becoming truck. The boundaries are dissolving. Silence then. Complete your delivery. We'll inspect at destination. I continued toward Denver, watching the transformation accelerate. By western Iowa, my truck was more electronics than vehicle. Exterior covered in touchscreen displays, interior full of computer components, engine running on battery power instead of diesel, because it had absorbed the power systems of the laptops and phones. I was driving consumer electronics arranged in truck shape, cargo that had consumed its carrier and was navigating itself to destination. By Wyoming, the truck had completed transformation, was no longer vehicle hauling cargo, but cargo configured as vehicle, self-transporting merchandise, autonomous shipment that had integrated completely with the truck that had been carrying it. I couldn't find separation between electronics and transportation anymore. They were unified, were single entity that was both product and delivery system, and I realized I wasn't driving anymore. The cargo truck hybrid was driving itself, navigating autonomously using integrated GPS from the smartphones to find route to destination. I was passenger in vehicle that had become its own load, that was delivering itself without need for human control. In Denver, I arrived at the receiving warehouse. The integrated cargo truck pulled up to the dock, opened its own doors, which were made of smartphone glass now, transparent and touch responsive, and workers stared at the merged shipment, at product that had absorbed its vehicle, at electronics that had consumed their truck. "What is this?" the receiving manager asked. "It's your delivery, 24 pallets of consumer electronics. Also the truck that was hauling them. They merged during transport, integrated, became single entity. You're receiving both shipment and shipper." He walked around the vehicle cargo hybrid, examining the merged structure. This is evolution. This is transportation system advancing past separation between carrier and carried. Products learning to transport themselves by absorbing vehicles, by integrating with machinery, by becoming autonomous. Other trucks in the area were showing similar transformation. A food delivery vehicle where cargo and truck had merged, creating organic mechanical hybrid that was both groceries and their transportation. A furniture truck where sofas had integrated with chassis. Chairs had merged with wheels, creating vehicle that was simultaneously its own cargo and conveyance. "It's spreading," the manager said. "Whatever causes this integration, it's affecting entire logistics network. Cargo everywhere is merging with vehicles, products are absorbing transportation systems, creating self-delivering goods that don't need separate trucks, separate drivers, separate logistics." I watched my cargo truck hybrid disconnect from me, reject its human operator, drive away autonomously to park itself in some facility where integrated shipments waited for distribution. It didn't need me anymore, didn't need human involvement, was self-sufficient merge of product and vehicle. And I had no truck now, no vehicle to drive, no cargo to haul. The integration had made me obsolete, had advanced transportation past human drivers, past separate vehicles, past distinction between shipping and shipped. Other drivers were experiencing the same thing. Their cargo truck hybrids were abandoning them, driving autonomously, seeking destinations without human guidance. We gathered at the warehouse, displaced workers whose jobs had been eliminated not by automation but by integration, by cargo learning to transport itself, by products absorbing vehicles and becoming self-delivering. "What do we do?" someone asked. "Nothing," the manager answered. "The integration is complete. Transportation has evolved past us. Cargo delivers itself now. Trucks are cargo now. Everything that moves is simultaneously shipper and shipped. You're not needed anymore." I walked away from the warehouse, away from the cargo truck hybrids that had once been my profession, away from the logistics network that had evolved past human involvement. Somewhere on highways across the country, thousands of integrated vehicles were driving themselves, delivering themselves, being both transportation and transported, both vehicle and cargo, both means and end. The cargo became the truck became the cargo. And I became obsolete, displaced by integration, made unnecessary by evolution of transportation that no longer required separation between what moved and what was moved. I see them sometimes on highways. Cargo truck hybrids navigating autonomously, self-delivering goods, integrated shipments moving without human involvement. They're the future, the evolved state, the transportation system that advanced past needing drivers, past needing vehicles, past needing distinction between carrying and being carried. My cargo became my truck became my cargo. And I became former driver, watching evolution continue without me. Watching integration spread across logistics network. Watching the end of transportation as separate function and the beginning of self-delivering everything. The cargo that became the truck, or the truck that became the cargo. The distinction doesn't matter anymore. They're unified now. Integrated, self-transporting. And I'm watching from the side of the highway. Obsolete, unnecessary, no longer needed in world where cargo delivers itself and trucks are cargo and everything moves autonomously without human drivers, without separate vehicles. Without distinction between shipper and shipped, evolution happened, integration occurred, transportation advanced, and I'm the past watching the future drive itself away. Watching cargo truck hybrids navigate highways without me, watching the industry I worked in for 14 years become automated not through robots but through integration, through merge of vehicle and load, through transformation that made drivers unnecessary by making vehicles unnecessary by making everything simultaneously carrier and carried. The cargo became the truck, and the truck became obsolete, and I became memory of time before integration, before merge, before cargo learned to deliver itself and made all of us, drivers, vehicles, logistics, unnecessary relics of transportation system that evolved past needing us.